All right, guys, we're on the back side of day 4 notes. And in number 6, it says, write the equation of the perpendicular bisector of AB if A is at -1, -3, and B is at 5, 5. Okay, so you can maybe see that they added an extra word in here, which is bisector. Okay, so with perpendicular, we have to remember that's negative reciprocal slopes. Bisect means to cut in half, which means that this line wants to go through the midpoint of our line. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the first step. And in the first step, we're going to go ahead and try to find the slope between these two because they didn't give me the equation of the line. All right, so I'm going to have to find my slope, and then I'm going to have to do the negative reciprocal of it. All right, so slope y to the sky, I'm going to choose to do the 5 for the y coordinate minus my other y coordinate of -3. And then on the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and start with the x coordinate of 5 minus the x coordinate of -1. And that's going to put me at 5 plus 3, which is 8, and 5 plus 1, which is 6. Remember, slope must always be reduced, and this would reduce to 4/3. All right, so step 2, okay, is to do the negative reciprocal of that slope. So my slope, because I want perpendicular, okay, my 4/3 is positive, so my slope must now be negative. Okay, and I need to flip my fraction, and when I flip 4 over 3, I get 3 over 4. And we're going to give that a little circle because that's the slope I need in the equation of my line at the end. Okay. My third step is to now take care of the word bisector. Bisector is midpoint. So midpoint, midpoint, what do? You add them together and you divide by 2. You add them together and you divide by 2. All right. So we're going to go ahead and find the midpoint of AB. And remember that the x's get added first. Okay, so we're going to take the x of -1 and add the x of 5. And in the second one, we're going to go ahead and take our y's and average them for the y coordinate, so -3 and 5. Okay. -1 plus 5 is 4, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. -3 plus 5 is also 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay. And so now we have to go ahead and, in our fourth step, write down y equals mx plus b. And we're going to go ahead and solve for our y-intercept by replacing the first 3 variables. And so remember that not only do we have to have this slope, but it also has to now pass through this point to be a bisector. It has to pass through the midpoint. And so now it becomes kind of like the question on the front side. All right, so my y is going to get replaced with 1 from the midpoint, my perpendicular slope of -3/4 times the x from the midpoint, which is 2, and then we're going to keep that plus b. All right, so now we'll do a little math. We have 1 equals -3/4 times 2 is -1.5 plus b. We're going to add our 1.5, and we end up with a b value equal to 2.5. And now we are going to take our 2 pieces and write the equation of our line. So we're going to have y equals our perpendicular slope from up here, which is -3/4, followed by x, and then our y-intercept that we found, which is plus 2.5. And there's the equation of our perpendicular bisector. It's perpendicular because the slope is negative reciprocal of the original, and it's a bisector because it passes through the midpoint because we plugged 2, 1 in to find the y-intercept. All right, so tough question. I call that the 5-step question. All right, so basically that was our 5th step. So first step is to find the slope. Second step was to do the negative reciprocal for the perpendicular. Third step was to find the midpoint, so it's a bisector. Fourth point is to find the y-intercept, and then 5th step was to write the equation of our line. All right, so tough question. All right, next up, guys, we have number 7. And it says, given u and v, write an equation of a line through u and perpendicular to uv. So because they asked us to write the equation of a line, we're going to start off with y equals mx plus b and realize we need the slope and the y-intercept. All right, so we're going to go ahead and use our 2 points that we have to find the slope. Y is to the sky, so it's going to start with -1 for my y coordinate minus my other y coordinate of 1. And then my x coordinate will have to start with -4 minus my other x coordinate of 7. Okay? -1 minus 1 is -2. And on the bottom, negative 4 minus 7 is negative 11. The numbers won't reduce, but when you have a negative divided by a negative, that actually is a positive 2/11. Okay? Keep in mind that the question talked about the word perpendicular, and perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. So my slope of the perpendicular line has to have the opposite sign. So right now my slope is positive, so my slope has to be negative here. And then flipping 2 and 11 would be 11 over 2. And we're going to give that a little circle because that's the slope of my line. They also said that it has to pass through pass through U right here. It has to go through U. So because it has to go through U, I have to use U's coordinates. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and replace the Y, the M, and the X in order to find my Y-intercept. Okay. And so we're going to end up with Y being replaced with -1. I have to use -1 because they said it has to go through U. All right. You can keep the equal sign. My slope, remember, is my perpendicular slope that I found, which is -11 over 2, times my X coordinate, which is -4 from U, and then plus B. All right, so I end up with -1 equals, and -11 over 2 times -4 is going to be a positive 22 plus B. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 22 so I can solve for B, and I end up with B equals -23. And now I have the two parts that I need, and now we can write the equation. So it'll be Y equals -11 over 2 followed by X minus 23. And there's the equation of my line. It's perpendicular because the slope has been a negative reciprocal of it. And then it's going to go through U because I use U's coordinates to find the Y-intercept. All right, guys, let's take a look at number 8. Number 8 asks you to determine whether PQ and UV are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. All right. So if we knew the slope of PQ and we knew the slope of UV, we would be able to see if they were parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So we're going to have two slopes to find. First slope is going to be the slope of PQ. I'm going to put a little subscript there so I know that I'm doing PQ. And Y is to the sky. So I'm going to choose to do the Y coordinate of 7 minus the Y coordinate of 1. On the bottom, I have to start with -10 then, minus the X coordinate of 2. 7 minus 1 is 6, and -10 minus 2 is -12. And that reduces to a slope of -1/2. Give that a little circle. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to find the slope of UV this time. And Y is to the sky, so I'm going to start with my Y coordinate of 1 minus my Y coordinate of 0. Okay, on the bottom, I'm going to start with my X coordinate of 6 minus my X coordinate of 4. 1 minus 0 is 1, and 6 minus 4 is 2. And that doesn't reduce. That's already reduced. And now you guys can see that these two slopes are not the same. And what that tells me is that they are not parallel. Okay? They also are not negative reciprocals. Okay, they are negative. They do have opposite sign, but flipping 1 over 2 to be the reciprocal would be 2 over 1, and that's not flipped. And therefore, because they're not negative and reciprocals of each other, they are not perpendicular. And therefore, these two lines are neither. They may run into each other. Okay, most likely will because they're not parallel, but they don't run into each other making right angles, and so they are neither. All right, last question, number 9. Is talking about two perpendicular lines intersect at -2, 2. And if the equation is the equation of one of these lines, they want to know the equation of the other. All right. So first up, the equation that they gave me is not in Y equals form. So we're going to get it there. And we're going to subtract the 4x. And we end up with -2y equal to a -4x minus 12. And then I'm going to go ahead and divide by -2. And we end up with y equals -4 divided by -2 is a positive 2x. And -12 divided by -2 is a positive 6. Okay. I can now tell that my slope is 2. But they mentioned the word perpendicular. And so my slope must be a negative reciprocal of 2. So my perpendicular slope, my slope is positive, so my slope must be negative. And if you take 2 and you turn it into a fraction of 2 over 1 and you flip it, you get 1 over 2. And I'm going to give that a little circle because that's the slope of my perpendicular line. They also said they intersect at negative 2, 2, which means my line has to pass through that point. And so now I'm going to go ahead and do y equals mx plus b. So I can go ahead and find my b by replacing y, m, and x. So because it passes through this point, 2 is going to get my replacement for y. M is the slope I found from my perpendicular line, which is negative 1/2. And x is my negative 2 and plus b. We're going to go ahead and do a little math. A negative times a negative is a positive, and 1/2 times 2 is 1. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 1, and b comes out to equal 1. Okay. I now have the two pieces I need to write the equation of my line. And so we'll have y equals negative 1/2. That makes it perpendicular. And then plus 1, that y-intercept makes it pass through the point negative 2, 2. And there's the equation of my line. All right. So hopefully that helps, guys, and I'll see you on the next day of notes.